Hi, I'm Holly. I'm the mom.
I'm Sydney. I'm the daughter.
And today we're going to be talking about the documentary 77 Minutes, and it is on Amazon Prime. And I do want to get a trigger warning. If you plan to watch this documentary or you haven't watched it yet, please be aware that there is actual police footage of the crime scene with the body still in place. It's pretty gruesome. It's the first time I watched it was about 4 years ago, and it's just really stuck with me because of how gruesome it is. So if that's not something you can handle, definitely don't watch this documentary. So the director is Charlie Min, and he has chosen not to name the shooter in the documentary, and we're going to respect that because the documentary is about the victims, not about the shooter.
Which I really love that because I feel like a lot of documentaries they focus so much on the killer. They tell the killer's entire life story. They tell this, they tell that, but you don't ever really get to know much about the person who lost their entire life.
Right. I mean, a lot of the times the victims are just a blip of a name and how they met their end, and not and the rest of it is all about the killer, like you said. Like, it's all about how they were raised and the trauma they went through and what brought them to this moment where they became, a serial killer or whatever.
How many of Jeffrey Dahmer's victims could you name off the top of your head? None.
None.
Literally none of them.
Right.
Because they do not get spoken about.
Right. So the documentary opens with an interview of Maria Letitia. She's one of the victims, and she's talking about how for years after the shooting, she would wake up screaming in the middle of the night. And with good reason. This
Yeah.
was one of the craziest things that had happened really to date. So it's July 18th, 1984 in San Ysidro, California. Population 25,000. It was annexed by San Diego in 1957. So it's really right outside what we know as San Diego.
Which 25,000, that's really, for California, it's not a lot of people in one area.
No, it's a very small community, and most of them are immigrants, Mexican immigrants. I didn't look it up, but they said a lot about Tijuana, so I think it's like right near the border, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe not. I don't know how close San Diego is to the border. So a lot of the footage is, well, most of the footage I would say is just the victims explaining what they saw that day and what happened that day. Aside from the police footage that we've warned you about, it's mostly victim stories. And so it starts with Albert Leos, and he's actually now a police captain, and McDonald's was his first job. And his friends were actually going to the beach that day, and they had tried to get him to come, and he was really tempted to call out. But where it was his first job, he decided he was going to do the right thing and go into work.
Yeah. Wanted to be responsible.
Right. Wendy Flanagan is also another person that works there. She's another young woman. She had just started her job at this particular McDonald's just 3 months earlier.
Yep.
And going through, most of the people that worked there were pretty young. I feel like McDonald's is typically a younger demographic of workers. So.
Yeah. It's usually the first stop that kids go to. I mean, not just McDonald's, but a lot of fast food chains.
Right.
It's their first stop in their career, you know?
Yeah. So shortly before 4 p.m., a deranged man leaves his house, and he's carrying a 9mm Browning semi-automatic pistol, a 9mm Uzi carbine, I think that's how it's said, and a Winchester 12-gauge pump action shotgun. The McDonald's is only about half a block from his apartment, so it's a very quick trip
Yep.
to where he plans to go. Everyone states that the next things happen very quickly and without much warning. He walks into the McDonald's, and some people report that he said to get down, and other people report that that was said after the first shot was fired. And I think, in a situation like that, it's going to be confusing about what took place exactly when. Plus, it's been proven that the human brain, especially during trauma, is is not reliable and it will mix things up.
Yeah, I mean, it like you said, it's really completely understandable because if you go through a traumatic experience and you try to verbatim remember everything, you're not going to be able to because your brain's going to jumble things up. Your brain's going to try and automatically forget things. It's a trauma response.
Right. Well, and sometimes it also fills in gaps
Mhm.
with things that aren't even true. There was actually a study done where people were shown some footage of an accident, and I can't remember what color the car was, but about half the people remembered the color to be correct, and about half the people didn't. And, it just goes to show when you see something crazy, your brain takes a minute to really grasp what's going on. And by then, it's pulling in details that it could have been a yellow fire hydrant next to it, but their brain is like, nope, the car was yellow.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we're not reliable witnesses. And they've found that to be the truth also with even trials, that people that aren't doing it maliciously still are not reliable witnesses.
Because you just can't help it.
Right.
Because the human brain is just, it's so many odds and ends of
Yeah.
how it's going to work.
So this part wasn't in the documentary. I found it in the Washington Post because I was looking for a little bit more information about how it started, because like I said, everyone was kind of conflicted. And that may have also been about where they were in the McDonald's. Were they out in the customer area? Were they in the back? So according to the Washington Post, the shooter entered and aimed his shotgun at a 16-year-old employee. And his name was John Arnold. And he pulled the trigger, but nothing happened. So as he is fiddling with his gun, trying to figure out what's going on, the manager, Neva Kane, who was just 22 at the time, starts walking towards the front. And just as she gets up there, he pulls out the shotgun and he shoots her. She's the first one to die. She's 22. She just got back from her honeymoon.
I remember that. Yeah, her and her husband if you're just coming back from your honeymoon, you haven't been married long.
Yeah, I think I had read somewhere 6 weeks.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
They'd only been married 6 weeks. Like, imagine that. You're 22, you're just starting your life.
Yeah.
And, at 22, being a manager of McDonald's, like, people can brag about that. Because
Right.
you don't get managerial jobs at 22 years old, So, she was probably so happy in the direction that her life was going.
Right.
And then just for someone to just walk in because they're having a bad day. You're having a bad day, you've had a bad life, and now you have to take it out on everybody else.
Exactly. So at this point is when, like I said, some people report that that's when he said for everyone to get down. And some people, their first response was run to the door. And the people that ran to the door, he started shooting at them. So back in the day, I think you were actually still little when they had the outdoor play places.
Mm-hmm. I remember playing in those.
Some did. Some of them had the new play places, which were enclosed, but still pretty cool. Like they had the things you could climb up in. But back when I was a kid, it was a big outdoor area with metal toys, which they had this hamburglar thing, which I loved. You climbed up in it and you were in the head of the hamburglar behind
cool.
bars. And they had those little metal ride-on toys on the springs that would go back and forth. I loved those too.
I still use those as an adult.
So back in the day, that's what they had in the little outdoor play place, but it was all in a fenced-in area so that kids weren't running out into traffic.
Yeah.
And so the shooter turned around and started to walk towards the play area. Like that was...
Because there's a bunch of kids out there.
Yeah. And so, I don't think anyone really understands the criminal mind anyway, but it's so crazy to me that your first thought is to kill children.
Literally. Like, your first thought is, well, there's a bunch of kids out there that don't know really what's going on, so I'm just going to go and kill them.
Right.
This whole thing is so deeply rooted in racism.
Oh, for sure.
And like when I think about it, I think about the fact that he's trying to end bloodlines. if you're killing children, you're ending bloodlines.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely saw it as that he picked this McDonald's
Oh,
specifically, this
yes.
community specifically. And we do find out later that he said that he hated immigrants, but particularly Mexicans. And this was a Mexican community.
Yeah.
Why he chose to live there, I don't know.
I know. Like, if you hate them so much, then move away.
Right. And he had actually previously, before this, because I guess he had only moved here like 6 months earlier, he had been living in Tijuana, but he lost his job there. So they moved here. If you hate Mexicans, why would you move to Mexico? I don't understand the racist brain, that like the thought process behind shit that they do.
I mean, to be honest, I have a feeling that it had something to do with superiority because I think it was I go to Tijuana, I get a job, they fire me. How could they fire me? I'm a brilliant white man.
True.
I think it, and especially back in that time, like, if you were racist, that's how you thought. You thought you were, I mean, still people think like that,
Right.
but like you thought you were superior. So how could they fire me?
Right.
You
Yeah.
know?
That could definitely have been it. So on his, as Maria Letitia sees that he is headed towards the play place, she has to leave her 1-year-old sitting at the table to go grab her 4-year-old who was outside playing, which back then was completely normal for our parents to just let us play outside as children by ourselves
Mhm.
with no supervision. So Maria Letitia left her 1-year-old at the table. Back then they had high chairs, so the baby was probably like stuck in the high chair. She ran out, got her 4-year-old, and then they came back and hid under the table. Then the next person to be interviewed is Keith Thomas, who is an adult now, but he was 12 years old when it happened, and he and his friend Mateo and Mateo's parents were sitting near the play place, and as they realized what was happening, Mateo and his mom got under one table, and Keith and Mateo's dad, Ronald, got under another table, and Ronald was shielding him. And as the shooter walks by towards the play place, he shoots at them. And Ronald is shot for the first time, but Keith doesn't realize that he has also been shot. He's been shot in the arm, but he didn't even realize it until they were under the table. Because it's, again, a trauma response where there's so much going on that you don't even realize that you've been injured. And we've heard about that happening before.
Once your adrenaline really kicks in, it's really hard to tell that you're injured by anything.
Right.
Your adrenaline will keep you going for far longer than your body could actually handle.
Well, and Keith even says, like, it wasn't even the pain that made him notice. It was the blood that he was like, oh crap. And even then it was more of a burning sensation than it was a pain sensation, because again, your adrenaline can help stave off pain.
Yeah.
So the first 911 call comes in shortly after 4 p.m. So they say that the shooter arrives shortly before 4 p.m. The 911 call comes in shortly after 4 p.m. So the not real exact times here, and I think in an active shooter case, exact times are actually pretty important. So Officer Miguel Rosario is the first that is dispatched to the scene. And the call that comes in is actually just that a child has been shot and they've taken her to the post office next door. And he is initially sent to the wrong McDonald's, which he doesn't seem like he thinks it's that big of a deal, because it only took him out of the way by like 2 to 4 minutes before they called him back and corrected it. So he's kind of like, 2 to 4 minutes. But 2 to 4 minutes in an active shooter situation is an eternity to the people that are being shot at.
Well, in 2 to 4 minutes, especially with an Uzi, like,
Right.
and I don't even know if he was actively using it during that time, but because it's kind of hard to tell, like, at what point he's picking up which gun, because we only hear really, like, when he shoots said person or this
Right.
person, like what weapon he's used. But let's say in those 2 to 4 minutes, he's unloading his Uzi on everybody. That's a lot of time.
Right.
It does not take long to empty out like any automatic weapon, really. It does not take long to empty those
No.
out.
Well, and also 2 to 4 minutes is, that delays locking down the parking lot to keep more people from entering.
Exactly.
So Wendy, during her interview, notes that the killer actually had brought a radio with him. And she at first assumed it was so that he could listen to the news that was being reported about what was happening. But strangely enough, he actually was just using it to play music.
Which is just so, like, that feels morbid to me.
Yeah.
Like, and especially because, again, going back to the trauma response thing, if any survivors were to hear, let's say, any of the songs that he was playing, they would not be able to listen to those for the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
Because that, like, people don't really realize what can give you a response, a bodily response. It could be a song, it could be a scent, it could be the way that a pattern looks on a shirt. Like,
Mhm.
you don't ever realize until it happens.
I just thought that was so bizarre
Yes.
to bring with him with the intent to play music. I do think later he does listen to some of the news, but predominantly playing music just, and to me it almost seems torturous, like it's part
Yes.
of the torture to his victims.
Yes.
Because I don't know, it was weird. So part of the problem with the delay in the response is now you have three kids walking through the parking lot. You have Joshua Coleman and his two friends, Omar Hernandez and David Flores, who I guess they were going to get donuts at a place called Yum Yum Donuts. And the way that they made it seem was they had to walk through the parking, or the easiest way to get there was to walk through the McDonald's parking lot to get to this donut place.
Mm-hmm.
So they're walking through and they're walking right next to the windows, pushing their bikes so that they, don't get hit by cars in the parking lot. And the shooter sees them and he open fires on them. And Joshua says he remembers somebody in the parking lot hollering at him. And as he turns to see who's hollering, which now he knows was someone trying to warn him to get away from the building, he gets shot. So he gets shot in the right side and he immediately drops to his knees. Omar gets shot in the back and David gets shot in the chest. And they are pretty sure that he died immediately. Omar lays there crying for his mom, and Joshua is recounting this because Joshua lives, and he is talking about how he hears Omar crying for his mom and he's trying to be still so that he can pretend that he's dead so he can't help his friend. And Omar eventually starts convulsing and vomiting and then he dies. But he died slowly. It was not immediate.
Yeah.
And Joshua continues to have to lay there with his two friends right next to him, deceased, pretending that he is also deceased so that he doesn't also get murdered.
To be able to play dead and have to feel every part of that pain, I'm sure is awful. And especially because I'm sure he wanted to help his friend, but if you go and you move, you're going to put more strain on your injury. And that's when you're
Right.
going to yell out. That's when you're going to cry and stuff like that. So I think as unfortunate as it was, he did the right thing. And especially for being so young.
Right.
Like, that's insane to think of doing that, to think of playing dead.
Right. I can't say, at 11 years old, I would have realized that I couldn't just try to crawl away. And that was the other thing, is because the shooter was able to see out and police weren't able to see in, they couldn't go up to try and help Joshua because every time police would try to approach, they would get shot at.
Mm-hmm.
So they had to wait until the shooter was down.
Yeah.
So Maricela Duarte, I could be saying her last name wrong, was with her husband and her young daughter. And they decided that they were hungry, and Maricela actually wanted tacos, but her husband wanted McDonald's. Back then it was a treat. Like, we didn't eat fast food like people do now. So when when you were craving McDonald's, that's what you wanted.
Yeah.
So she told him to go to the San Isidro one because it was closer than the San Diego one, so they could just get in and get out and get back to their day.
Yep.
So they get out of the car, and Maricela has her daughter on her hip. She's just a toddler, and they start walking in. Again, the parking lot has not been locked down yet. This is all happening in that short amount of time between him arriving and the police arriving.
Mm-hmm.
And so as they're walking in, Maricela says that all of a sudden it felt like a bomb went off in her face. And she starts screaming, "My eye, my eye." And her husband grabs their toddler and screams, "Run." And they run in different directions. And when they meet back up, I believe in the post office parking lot, which was right next door, he doesn't have her baby. And she is beside herself because he doesn't even know who he gave the baby to because he's also been shot. So at this point, no, she doesn't know if her daughter is safe, if her daughter was shot, or even where her daughter is at this point.
Yeah.
So Officer Rosario finally arrives, but he goes to the post office because that's what the call said, was that there was a child that had been shot at the post office. There is no mention that there is a shooting going on at McDonald's.
Which I just don't understand how. Because if someone is, obviously it's some sort of witness making this call, and there are kids dead in the parking lot, there have to be shots that have been fired out of the window. There have to be bullet holes in order to have shot these kids outside. And like, I just don't understand how this information got so misconstrued.
Well, and I wonder because the post office is closer to the road than the area that the kids are laying in, and since they are laying down, there could have been cars. So when Officer Rosario pulled up, his view may have been obstructed by cars parked in the parking lot. But as far as the windows being shot out, I can only say I would imagine he just wasn't being that observant, thinking that that wasn't what was going on. But if you have a child who's been shot, wouldn't you be looking around to figure out who shot them, where the shot came from, like anything? So he pulls up to the post office, and it doesn't explain if he actually went into the building and got an all clear or what, and on his way out he noticed this, or on his way in he noticed. But he did notice people were crouched behind cars and looking at the McDonald's.
Mm-hmm.
And that is when he realizes this is not what he thought it was. Which, like you said, is kind of crazy. Like that there's been a call that has come in that there was a shooting of a child, but nobody's mentioned that there's a shooting at McDonald's.
Yeah. How is nobody calling with more information? How is there not more being shared amongst everybody? Like, and of course, this was 1984, so it's not like, everybody and their mamas had a cell phone like we do now. But it's like, I don't understand how there was just such little information, because obviously all of these people that are dealing with it, they're not the ones calling in. They're trying to survive. Right. Who is the person that called, and why is there little to no information from them? Like, and there's no way you can't hear that, because if let's just say this for a scenario. This person is at the post office. They call. They stay at the post office. You have two people that have now run in, whatever. You see whatever. But how do you not hear all of these gunshots going on? I understand that there's a whole parking lot between, but a gunshot is fucking loud.
Well, but it's also, you're talking about, it's inside a building, and if you've seen, I don't know if you looked at the pictures of where it is, but it's a very busy intersection in front of this area. So you also have all the noises of traffic. So I don't know if they just didn't notice that. But back to your point where you said you have at least two people coming in, because you have the kid that was shot and whoever brought the kid in.
Yeah.
they're not saying she was shot at McDonald's. There's a shooter at McDonald's. Tell 911 that. Like,
Exactly. But I really don't get how there was just little to no information shared about this.
so, Officer Rosario, um, he notices the people crouched behind the vehicles outside in the parking lot, and he looks towards McDonald's. And just as he's looking over, the shooter appears in the doorway, and the door is gone, like he's shot it out, so he's able to clearly see him, and the shooter sees him, and he's able to dive behind a truck just as the shooter starts firing on him. So he's kind of stuck there, and he actually remembers being mad that all he's armed with is a Glock, and this guy has an Uzi,
Mm-hmm.
and he knows he's outgunned, so he has to call in a code 10. So Albert Leos is hiding in the kitchen with some coworkers, and I don't I don't know, it's been a long time since I've been inside a fast food restaurant. We don't go very often, and when we do, it's through the drive-through. So I don't know if it's the same, but I do remember when I was a teenager, I worked at Arby's, and everything behind the register area is all made out of metal.
Mm-hmm.
And so Albert is back there in the kitchen with some coworkers, and he said that the shooter would just like spray bullets all over that metal, and they would just ricochet everywhere, which
Yeah.
had to have been so. The situation is already terrifying, but to think that you're semi hidden but could just take a stray bullet is also so scary.
Yeah.
So the other thing that Albert talks about, which again, this kind of makes me think that this has to do with, basically torturing people, is that he would stop firing for like 5 to 10 minutes. And he would use it to reload, but it wasn't taking him 5 to 10 minutes to reload. He would just wait 5 to 10 minutes, reload, and then start shooting again.
Yeah.
And I feel like it was a psychological torture.
Like you said, it didn't take 5 to 10 minutes to reload, but also he's got 2 other guns.
Right.
Like, he really doesn't need to reload that often. He can, take the Uzi, empty it out, just use the shotgun. Probably has, I don't know, 6 to 12 bullets in the handgun. Like, doesn't really need to, like you said, doesn't need to stop for that long. So, and I just wonder what he was waiting that long for. Because more than likely it was torture, but also is it like, am I going to get caught?
Right.
Is someone going to come and stop me?
Well, the other thing that Albert mentioned was that he would start shooting people again,
Mhm.
like people that he had already shot. And sometimes it was people that were already dead. He would just go back and shoot them more.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was just to make sure they were dead or just because he was fucking Looney Tunes and that was what he wanted to do. Like Maria Letitia, who is cowering under the table with her children, she's telling them to just go to sleep, because in her mind, they're asleep when he murders them. They won't feel any pain.
Mm-hmm.
But she shares the devastating memory of him telling everyone to tell their kids to be quiet because they were giving him anxiety. And because some children continued to cry, he just went up and shot them.
And it's just so gross to me. Like, you're getting anxiety over terrified children.
Right.
Because you're killing everybody. Because you're shooting up in a McDonald's. What, like, for children that don't have a lot, McDonald's is Disneyland.
Right.
This is their happiest place on earth. Like, I loved McDonald's when I was a kid. And so for you to, like, you have to be some sort of fucking evil from the depths of hell to be like, your kids are giving me anxiety while I kill people. Can you please shut them up or else they'll die too?
Right.
Like,
I mean, again, I think his intention was to kill them anyway.
oh yeah.
And again, psychological torture of telling parents, if you can't stop your kids from crying, then it's going to be your fault that I shoot them. I really think that so much of this was psychological torture
Mm-hmm.
and purposeful.
Yeah.
Joshua is still laying out there pretending that he's dead, and he watches helplessly as an elderly couple, Ada and Miguel Victoria, approach the restaurant. Ada goes to open the door, and the shooter kills her immediately. And she goes down, and Miguel is crouching over her body, crying and screaming, "Why?" And the shooter shoots him too.
Because of course, Joshua can't he can't do anything. He couldn't even do anything for his friend.
Right.
He's come this far already. He just does not want to risk it, and I'm sure that he would have loved more than anything to tell them to not go in there, but he is trying to save himself.
Right. He has to, he's got self preservation, and you have to, because if the shooter heard him outside, because he was just outside the window on the sidewalk, if the shooter had heard him,
He would have come out and shot him.
Exactly.
Because he was in there shooting dead bodies already. He would have come out and been like, "Oh, I didn't finish this one off."
Exactly. Officer Rosario makes his way behind a palm tree where he has some coverage, and he gets down on his stomach, and he realizes that he has a clear shot. But he doesn't take it because he's scared that there are multiple shooters, and that if he kills one, the other one will just start killing everybody.
Mm-hmm.
And so he doesn't do anything. And I really think that this is, I understand the logic behind it, but I feel like this was such a poor decision.
Oh, definitely. If an example, there were two killers. And yes, I understand the whole fact of, well, if I shoot one, the other one's going to get agitated. But if you don't shoot either of them, in the case that there are two, if you don't shoot either of them, they're still going to keep killing regardless.
Right.
Like, I think that was just such a poor decision, because I would rather take one down and risk having to rush another one than just to let them both be in there running amok. Which, again, there's not two.
Right. But they don't know that.
But they don't know that.
And journalist Doug Curley, he does make some good points about this, because I was kind of agitated as I was watching it, but he actually points out that, he believes what Officer Rosario did was the correct thing, because the windows are thick. And even the shooter's Uzi is not making its way out of not all bullets are making its way through to the other side. So there's no reason to believe that the Glock will make its way through.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't if they don't hit their target, if they don't make their way through, or if they only minorly injure the shooter, this could make things exponentially worse for the victims inside.
Yeah.
Especially, at that point, if a shooter thinks there's absolutely no way out, they have no reason to not just finish everybody off. Make sure that everyone's dead before they get killed.
Yeah.
So Charlie Min asked Officer Rosario in retrospect, should he have Charlie Min asked Officer Rosario in retrospect, should you have taken that shot? And Rosario states that without enough information, which he didn't have at the time, he believes he made the right choice, and that he doesn't allow himself to second guess himself. So Wendy talks about how they could hear the police outside, and they just kept thinking, while they're in there, they're going to come in soon. They're going to come in soon. Where the fuck are the police officers? What is happening? And I just can't imagine being in that situation where at any moment you could be gunned down and there's police officers right outside the door doing nothing. This reminds me a lot of, Uvalde, and how they just stood outside and parents had to be the one rushing in. So,
and I'm sorry, and this may sound insensitive, but part of being a police officer is putting your life on the line to save others.
Mm-hmm.
It is help others before you help yourself, because this is the oath that you took.
Right. And if you don't want to do that,
don't be a police officer.
Don't be a police officer. Sorry.
Yeah. I don't care if anything like that sounds insensitive. It's just like going into the military. And if you're deployed off to war, you can't just hide behind a tree the whole time. You have to go out and fight. You have been put out there to fight for your country. You have put yourself in a position as a police officer to fight for your people.
Well, and I'm sorry, but if you if we expect nurses and doctors and CNAs to take physical abuse from patients and that's just part of the job, then this is just fucking part of your job as a police officer.
Because security guards in the hospital, they can't put their hands on patients. They're not supposed to.
Right.
They're not supposed to. So literally, we are expecting doctors, nurses, and CNAs to take abuse. And police officers are like, well, we don't know the situation inside, so you're going to let everyone else die.
Right. So Maria Letitia talks about how, her and her girls are under the table and he has already shot at them. Her arm has been grazed by a bullet and her 4-year-old has been shot in the leg. And he comes over to check if she's dead and kicks her. And miraculously, she makes no sound and he moves on.
And there's a bunch of blood that's like around them too. So,
right.
And like, thank God that he didn't just decide to shoot any of them again like he was doing with other dead bodies. Like, thank God. And I don't know if he just didn't do that because the police had been there at that point or what, but I'm just so like, whatever the decision was to not shoot them again after he thought they were dead, thank fuck.
Yeah. So we're now 35 to 45 minutes into this rampage. And the shooter hears crying from the kitchen. Apparently one of the employees whimpers and they probably all know what's coming next after they realize that she's made a noise. She probably was horrified, but it escapes you sometimes.
Especially when you think that the shooter's busy doing something else. Maybe she didn't think that he was going to hear her.
Well, and I'm sure she didn't do it on purpose, though.
Yeah, I'm sure she was just
so
in
everyone
pain.
waits with bated breath to see if he heard, and he did. So he comes around the corner in the kitchen. So as he enters the kitchen, he says, "Oh, you tried to hide from me. There's more of you bastards," according to Wikipedia. And so Margarita Padilla actually encourages Wendy to run, and they're running to the back door. And he shoots, they call her Maggie. He shoots her, she goes down and dies, and Wendy makes it to the back door only to realize that it's locked.
Because they don't want employees to steal food.
Which is...
It's McDonald's.
Well, and the thing is there was a fire in a garment factory. The people were locked inside and a lot of people died. And we learned at that point that it was not okay to lock people into a premises.
Especially because they're back in the kitchen.
Right.
If there's a fire, they don't have many places to go.
Right. So why in 1984 was this still a practice? Like, and honestly, I wouldn't even be surprised to find out if there are still places pulling this shit on people, because there's just not enough oversight at small businesses. And even though McDonald's is a big corporation, they're usually owned locally.
Yeah.
They're usually franchises, and there's not a lot of oversight with what that franchisee is doing with their franchise.
If you have a franchise, unlock your fucking back door if it's locked.
Well, not just any franchise. If you own a business and you're making it so your employees only have one way in and one way out,
and that's the front
you're a
door.
fucking problem.
Yeah. Make sure people have a way to get out.
So anyway, Wendy gets to the door and realizes it's locked, and she turns and there's basement steps. So she runs down to the basement. There's people following her, and there's a closet in the basement. So it ends up being 6 adults and a baby hiding in this closet in the basement. Thankfully, the shooter does not ever go down into the basement. But Albert is one of the employees hiding in the kitchen, as we mentioned before, because he talked about the ricochet, and he gets shot 5 times. The shooter turns away, goes back out into the guest area, and Albert crawls all the way from the kitchen, down the hallway, down the steps, and gets into that closet. He starts banging on the door and just scares them at first, but then they realize it's Albert, so they drag him in. And he actually used his own belt as a tourniquet. and they had to stuff a rag into his mouth so that when they tightened the tourniquet, the shooter didn't hear him scream.
Which is just like, I don't even know. I like, that is just so incredible that he was able to crawl all the way through the kitchen downstairs. Like, that's incredible human strength.
25 stairs. And sorry, I misspoke. It wasn't his belt. He uses shoelaces.
Mm.
So if you want to talk about somebody with some ingenuity to know enough, because he was shot in the leg, to know enough to take his shoelaces to make himself a tourniquet is pretty crazy, because he was not, I don't think he was over 21.
I don't think he was over 21, and he was not of any type of military personnel.
Right.
He was not, healthcare personnel. Like, that's something that normal people wouldn't know to do.
Right.
Like, so it's incredible that he had that somewhere deep in his mind to do that.
So Chuck Foster is the SWAT sniper. He arrives at 4:40. So we're only 16 minutes short of an hour from when the shooter arrived. And now we finally have the sniper arriving.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like a pretty late response for an area that's been annexed by San Diego, which is a very large city.
And also just like such a small building that
Right.
it's not exactly difficult to get to people in. Like,
Yeah. So he gets up on the post office roof to see what he's got for sight lines. It's about 110 feet away, and the windows are tinted, and the sun is setting, so it's really hard to see because the sun is reflecting off the glass. So it's really hard for him to see. But he realizes there is a door that we had talked about earlier that he had blown out. So as he walks in front of it, Officer Foster takes the shot and shoots him in the heart and kills him instantly.
yeah, because he can't see him from where he is. His head, it's just his shoulders up that he can't see.
Right, because he's elevated
Yeah.
and the shooter's down on the ground floor.
Because typically, I feel like for this kind of scenario, the ideal shot is a headshot.
Right.
Ensure that it's over and ensure that it's quick. And, by taking the shot in the heart, it's difficult because, he could still be alive because maybe it didn't quite get his heart. Maybe it punctured his lung and it'll
Right.
take a little bit for him. So it was a very risky shot, but he did it.
So what's crazy though is, I mean, I'm sure he didn't, because he arrived at 4:40. I'm sure he didn't immediately just get into position and take the shot. It took him a little bit, but they don't say exactly at what time he takes the shot. But they do say at 5:20 is when the police officers go into the building after the shooter is down. Was there time in between? Like, because if he didn't get there until 4:40 and the officers don't go in until 5:20, what happened in those 40 minutes? How long did it take Chuck Foster to get the view that he did so that he could take the shot? When did the shooter go down? That's what I want to know.
Mm-hmm.
Because we've already established that things are taking way too fucking long with the shooting.
Yep.
So anyway, they rush into the building, and the first thing they do is cuff the suspect, because just in case he has lived, they want to make sure he doesn't pick up a gun and start shooting everybody again.
Yep.
And that's when they see the reality of what has just transpired over the last 77 minutes.
Yep.
So Guadalupe Del Rio was one of the first people to exit the building, and Officer Al Vitella asked her if she's okay because she's covered in blood, like it's all over her dress, and she's like, yes. She doesn't even know she's been shot, but she has been. She survives, but again, such a trauma response where you don't even know you've been shot.
Yeah. You just want to get out.
Right.
You want to just
and who
survive.
knows how long ago she had been shot and didn't realize it because she was just so friggin' scared this whole time.
Yeah.
So when the police came in, an alarm started going off, like a building alarm, which means the people in the basement did not know that the police had entered the building.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing they know is somebody's pounding on the door telling them to come out, and they don't know if it's the shooter or if it's the police, but they're terrified.
Yeah.
So the police fling open the door. So the police don't know, are these victims or are these more suspects?
Yeah.
They do get it all sorted out. They get them out of the building as well. When the shooting is over, Keith, who has been hiding under the table with Mateo's dad, Ronald, gets up and goes and checks on his best friend. And he thought Mateo was asleep. So Mateo, who was only 11 years old, he and his mother, Blythe Reagan Herrera, were both murdered. She was only 31. So back to Maricela. She has been shot in the eye. What she doesn't know is that her baby has also been shot in the head. A good Samaritan had actually taken baby Carla from her dad and found a police officer and basically it was like, we got to get this baby to a hospital right now.
Mm-hmm.
She jumps into the front seat. They put the baby in between her and the officer. The officer is driving as fast as he can, doing what he can to keep her alive. The good Samaritan has her hand on the baby's head, trying to control the bleeding. And even though she spent some time in the hospital, baby Carla survives. And she was only 4 months old at the time. And the doctor said if that good Samaritan had not rushed her to a police officer who rushed her to the hospital, she would not have made it.
Yeah. I mean, it's incredible that she did and didn't sustain really any brain injury. Like,
right. Well, and she was also shot in the stomach.
Yeah, because her and her mom have the same scar up their stomach.
Maricela, like you said, she also was shot in the stomach, and her injuries have caused lifelong pain for her. She lost her eye, and she has a rather large scar on her stomach from the surgery that was needed. And the worst part was she and Carla and her husband, Astolfo, were all sent to 3 separate hospitals. So none of them knew how the other one was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's such an important part of your recovery, is to know that your loved ones are okay and to be able to see them. And I don't know, that really bothered me a lot that they were all separated.
It's super hard because with Maricela and her husband, I think they should have gone to the same hospital. But with their baby, nobody knew who this baby belonged to.
True. No, that's true.
Because it really wasn't until she saw her in a newspaper with the nurse that was like coddling her head that she was like, "Oh my God, that's my baby." Like, and like you said, if I was in the hospital and I was recovering and didn't know where my baby was or if my baby was still alive, I don't know if I could even come out of it.
Right. I imagine by then they had told her, or that they had to have figured, by the time she saw the news article, she had to have known where her child was.
I'm pretty sure it wasn't until the news article that she didn't know where Carla was.
That's crazy. Ugh.
Yeah.
So the police department video crew goes in and they record the scene before all the bodies are removed. There's bodies everywhere. There's blood everywhere. It's very chilling. And I think to add to that, I was watching it with headphones on, and you can hear in the background music playing. And it was even more chilling because other than the police officers talking quietly and him walking through the glass as he's recording, you can hear music lowly playing in the background. And I would assume that that's the radio the killer brought.
It's so strange about the perception of people because I didn't hear, I also watched with headphones, but I don't even remember hearing them talk because I was just looking at everybody and I was analyzing their faces and I was analyzing their wounds and the positions that they were left in. I didn't hear anything. Like it felt like the world had been sounded out. Like I was just deaf to the world. And all I could just see was these people. And yeah, so it's so interesting how perception works.
It is, because I had a completely different experience where everything was magnified to me as he's walking through and you're seeing the devastation. It's really crazy how different people see and feel situations that are traumatic.
Yeah.
Because even watching it is traumatic. I cannot imagine what it would be like to go through it.
Oh
But
God.
seeing it is also traumatic.
My heart was like pumping. My heart
Mhm.
was like, it felt like my heart was about to come out of my throat because I was just so like, because it's not just adults, it's kids of all ages that are
Mhm.
just starting their lives.
I think
It's
the hardest for me that I still to this day, like I said, even when I watched it like 4 years ago, was the baby.
was the couple where she's laying her head on her husband's chest, I assume husband, and they've got the baby laying in between
Yeah,
them. Yeah, that like
that broke me.
that fucked me up.
So the shooting lasted for 77 minutes, hence the name of the documentary, during which the shooter killed 21 people and wounded 19 others. Approximately 175 police officers surrounded the restaurant. Why it took 175 people to do nothing? Because it only was one person who did anything, as far as I'm concerned, which was Chuck Foster.
And also, I'm sorry, but if you think that there's two shooters and there's 175 of you, what the fuck are you doing?
Right.
Two people versus yeah, make this math make sense.
According to the Union Tribune, Jerry Sanders, who was the former SWAT commander, actually got word about the shooting 30 minutes late because he was at a conference and his beeper wasn't working. He got notification at 4:34 and didn't arrive until 5 p.m. because of rush hour traffic. So the shooting, we're talking an hour at this point before the SWAT commander even arrives.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm wondering, remember we talked about that 40 minutes between Chuck Foster arriving versus the police going in. Did Chuck have to wait for the commander to arrive to give him the all clear to take the shot? So was Chuck Foster up on that roof at 4:40 waiting for his commanding officer to get there to give him the green light? Jerry Sanders doesn't get there until 5. Does that mean that Chuck Foster sat up there for those 20 minutes to whatever time it took after that to get the green light?
Yeah.
And that's why there's that 40-minute gap. Not because he didn't have a good shot, but because we had to wait for a commanding officer.
Which I just think is so fucking stupid.
I mean, I don't know. This is just
but
speculation.
But like, I more than likely believe that is the case because, I mean, Jesus, when you go through police training or you go through SWAT training, the most important thing is that you have to, unless you feel as though you are in immediate danger, you don't take a shot without a green light. And so I'm going to probably take a good guess and say, yeah, a majority of that time was him waiting for a green light because he's not in immediate danger.
Right.
None of the other officers are in immediate danger, just civilians.
Well, and that's the thing. That was, where I was going to go next is when Charlie Min asks, Officer Rosario, why they waited so long. He denies knowing that people were being murdered inside. And that's the crazy thing is all the police interviewed, other than Albert, who wasn't a police officer at the time, deny knowing that the shooting was ongoing through this whole time. But the thing is journalist Carlos, and I may be butchering his last name, Amezcua, states that you could see a shadowy figure moving around inside, shooting people. You could see what was going on. And you could see him loading, reloading, and shooting at people.
Well, I mean, Jesus Christ, you have an elderly dead couple and 3 teens,
right.
three young boys who are dead by their bikes. And obviously, Josh is alive, but for all they know, he's dead. He's dead amongst these other 2 boys. So don't fucking tell me that you didn't know what was going on when there are literally 5 different people outside who are dead/injured.
Well, they're trying to say they knew that a shooting took place, but they didn't know if there were any survivors, which if there aren't any survivors, then why the fuck do you care if you rush in or not? Or that they didn't know that he was still killing. Like,
but he's still in there.
Right. Be so for real. So Charlie Min says to Jerry Sanders, the SWAT commander, did you know there was a man in there shooting babies, innocent people? And he says, no, we knew people were being shot. And we knew people had been shot, that there were some on the perimeter and people crouched down, but that meant officers couldn't rush or fire back. Again, officers and people in law enforcement are really bad about criticizing their department and leadership, even when I feel like it should be.
Yes. Because everything is held so tightly under wraps.
Yeah.
The thing about it is that a lot of law enforcement, if they make a mistake, they'll try and hide it as far away as they can because they think that if they hide one of their mistakes, that it'll make us trust them more.
Well, but I mean, look at how many times they've, someone has been injured or killed even when the situation didn't warrant it, and an officer lies and says, oh, they charged at me or they had a weapon, and then body cam shows that's not accurate, which is why body cam is so important. So Commander Larry Gore claimed that most of the killings happened in the first 10 minutes. And Officer Rosario reiterates that. So I don't know if Officer Rosario really believes that because of what he saw or if because that's what he's been told. And because he was the first responding officer, so you would think he would know.
Yeah.
But we know that's not true. Charlie Min says, I have witnesses that refute that. People survived this incident. They're going to know better than these people that waited outside for over an hour.
Yep.
And so he asked Captain Albert Leos, who was in the restaurant, if he agreed, and he doesn't.
Yeah.
He says he does not believe that to be true. They ask Wendy if she thinks it's accurate, and she says, yes, many were shot in the beginning, but they weren't all dead. If EMTs had been allowed to come in, some people may have survived.
Oh, and I truly believe that. Because, I mean, a lot of the time when somebody is shot, unless it is in a fatal position, unless it's along your heart or your brain, you have a pretty good chance of survival. But if you are bleeding long enough, you're done.
I mean, it does depend, too. Like, you have large arteries in your arms and your legs.
That is true.
But there are a lot of places people can survive gunshot wounds.
Yes.
And there were people that were moaning, and there were people that were crying that were alive. And I mean, let's go back to Ronald Herrera. He was shot 9 times. 2 of those gunshot wounds were 45 minutes apart. So he's angry. To this day, he is angry.
Yeah.
And he has every reason to be. Because they don't say, between, the first shot to the 9th shot, like when each took place, but the guy shot him a couple of times and then came back 45 minutes later and shot him more. So Charlie Min, he's asking all the police officers that he's interviewed, if they have regrets. And Jerry Sanders seems kind of a dick about his answer.
Jerry Sanders basically just said, oh, well, bad shit happens. And it's like, okay, and you are police and SWAT to ensure that it doesn't.
Well, and the thing is I think we can all agree that bad shit happens.
Yeah.
But read the room. Like, people are clearly pissed because of how long your response took. I don't think that that's something that you should be saying. It just seemed really callous.
Exactly.
With what had happened.
Like, you're going to sit here where mothers, husbands, babies were murdered and then just say, well, bad shit happens. Yeah, it does happen. And it's fucking horrible for you to just act like it's nothing.
Right. I did really like, though, that Charlie Min put them on the spot. And I think that was what elicited that response.
Yeah.
Was he felt like he was on the spot.
Yeah.
Because he even kind of laughed at it. And I was like, ew.
Yeah. He felt the weight of the question.
Right.
Because, and I love Charlie through this whole thing because he was willing to put on the pressure.
Right.
A lot of these times, a lot of these docs that we watch, people do not put enough pressure on these people. I mean, go all the way back to the catfish thing. They did not put pressure on that woman. And so you don't really get much of a response out of her or her emotional side of it all.
Right.
And so for Jerry to get this question from Charlie, it was a lot of pressure on him. And that's what he fucking deserves. You deserve to feel the weight of the world.
Mm-hmm. So a homicide lieutenant that's interviewed claims that the coroner believes that 13 of the victims died instantly,
Mm-hmm.
refuting the claim that some people may have bled to death. I don't see how that's refuting the claim because 21 people are dead. If 13 of them died instantly, that means 8 of them didn't.
Yeah.
So technically, if we want to talk, on technically, sure, most of them would not have been saved if EMT could have come in. Most of them died instantly.
But there are 8 people that could have lived.
Maybe. We don't know how long they did bleed for, because there's a difference between even 5 minutes and instantaneous death.
Yeah.
But, we will never know because they're not going to release that sort of information about how long the coroner thinks the people that did bleed to death, how long it took them to die.
Yep.
They're certainly not going to release that.
Oh, God, no. No, they're going to do whatever they can to just keep it as hush as possible.
Right. Well, and speaking of that, even throughout the night, they were hush about who the victims were. And people that knew that their loved ones were at that McDonald's or were missing and lived in that area had to wait until the next day to get any sort of answers about if it was their loved one that was dead or not,
Mm-hmm.
which is crazy to me. Like, I feel like notifying families should be one of the first things that is worked on. Well, what they ended up doing was bringing all the bodies back to the coroner's office, and they took Polaroids of all the faces and then basically like set up at an auditorium with these Polaroids and showed the photographs to loved ones. And actually, Detective Rick Carlson talks about this and he gets choked up. Like, this was a very emotional thing for him to witness and be part of.
I can imagine.
And, people that had waited all night to hear if their loved one had lived or died, and to not even, I mean, I know it's traumatic to identify a body. I've never had to do it, but I have heard from people that have. And one of the things that they've said is, as traumatic as it was, being able to touch that person one more time or say goodbye one more time was really important to them.
Yeah, because there are a lot of people where, their loved ones go missing and they never get that closure. And, it's a wonder for years of where did you go and where are you now? And another thing is that a lot of people don't realize that with a part of this being as traumatic as it was for these family members, these are not just faces on a board.
Right.
These are not just pictures of people. These are the people they love. These are the people they probably haven't even slept over.
Right.
They probably stayed up all night and waited for a call to come and be able to identify their loved ones. Like, how fucking awful is that? And I don't know. I think there's just something about putting all of their photos up on a board that just feels just weird to me.
And I get why, in mass casualties it's used, but I feel like it should be used for the unidentified. Give the families a chance that know that they're, are pretty sure their loved one is there and can give you a description that matches one of your victims, and then you show them the body, or the face or whatever, let them identify the body. And then anyone that's unidentified, then you use the Polaroids.
Exactly.
Seems very backwards to do it the other way around.
Well, and like even have the families bring in a photo of that person. Like
right.
That is because back in 1984, that's when people were making photo albums.
Right.
That's when like having a physical copy of a picture was at its biggest. Because
Right.
now it's, now you can just bring in your phone and be like, here's a picture. But it's like it would have been so easy to take a photo from the family member, go back, match it to the Polaroid you have or match it to the body you have. Like, I don't know. It just feels so, the whole on the board thing for 21 people just feels insensitive to me.
Right.
Like, I didn't like that.
No, and I feel like it also takes away the privacy
Yes.
of the dead.
Yes.
You know, I don't want a bunch of strangers gawking at a Polaroid of my face. Or, I'm sure they didn't show the whole body, but just my face while I'm dead. And I
Well,
certainly don't want my family, trying to wait their turn to see if my face is on the board. That's weird.
exactly. And no, and you're exactly right. Like, because I mean, I'm sure there were some injuries to the face for these people, but also like just that feeling of having to go through each of them and like, is this the person? No. Is this no? Is that like,
Right.
it just feels, I don't know. It just makes me feel gross inside. Like, I don't like that they did it like that.
I don't either. San Isidro was the worst mass shooting in the US at the time. That was 1984. And when the documentary released in 2016, it ranked the fifth. Now, just 8 years later in 2025, it ranks the eighth. So, I mean, honestly, with all the mass shootings that we've had, I was surprised that it's only eighth at this point. I figured it would have been pushed further out because I feel like mass shootings happen so often now that
Yeah.
it's like you have to brave yourself just to go to Walmart nowadays.
Yeah. I have to
Um,
brave myself to send my son to school.
yeah.
Like, I get terrified every day. And I know how well that building is locked down. I know it. And I
Hmm.
still am scared.
Yeah. It's really crazy that, you know, the worst mass shooting of the time was in 1984 and things have only gotten worse, not better. The day after the shooting, the shooter's wife contacted the media and she specifically asked for Carlos by name and told him, I need to tell my story, which that was a little weird to me too. That she didn't reach out to the police, that she reached out to the media.
Yeah. So clearly, this is going to sound fucked up. Clearly, she's got something fucking wrong too.
Right.
Because you're not doing it out of guilt. You're doing it because you want some sort of attention.
I guess it was weird. So she actually tells him that this is where we find out that he's anti-immigrant, specifically Mexicans.
Mm-hmm.
And she also tells him that he has a propensity for shooting weapons in their basement. So that's not gun safety 101. You don't shoot guns in basements. That is crazy to me.
Yeah.
Even if it's a dirt basement and you don't worry about ricochet, like it's still not normal. That's not normal behavior.
The only place you should be shooting that's indoors is a gun range.
Right.
Like, no other option.
And so she also tells him that the morning before, her husband had called a mental health clinic and told them that he was having mental health issues, but they never called him back. And come to find out, it was because he was so like cool, calm, and collected that they took it down as non-urgent. And which, when it's non-urgent, they take up to 48 hours to return your call, depending on availability. Um, but they definitely didn't take him seriously. And
Mhm.
I feel like, again, this is something that's not gotten better. It's only gotten worse because this is not the first time or the last time that shit has happened.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, not even just with people who have the idea of harming others, people who have the idea of harming themselves, they never hear back from these hotlines, so they end up just doing it.
Right.
Because sometimes they're not in a state of panic about doing it.
Right.
Sometimes they're just like, I'm ready to end it. Maybe I can see if someone can talk me out of it. And if they don't hear back, they're like, well,
And that's the thing is, I don't want to paint because most of this was not. Well, some of this was gone over very lightly in the documentary because it's important that we don't think that there is any excuse for what he did.
Yeah.
Even with a mental distress, it's completely unacceptable.
mm-hmm.
But it's more about all the failures that took place that led up to, because if she knew that he was having mental distress, she knew that he was shooting guns in the basement, and then what he does next, and she doesn't notify anybody. That's a
Literally.
fucking failure.
Yes.
So what she ends up doing is the next morning, he actually takes his wife and his child to the courthouse because he's there to appeal a traffic ticket. And he was there for 3.5 hours waiting his turn.
Mm-hmm.
He didn't appear distressed or anxious, and the fine was thrown out. So even the people that saw him at the courthouse had no reason to believe that this was coming.
Yeah.
He seemed absolutely normal. And most people would be in a good mood after getting their fine thrown out.
Yeah. But also, a lot of people would be anxious and probably pissed off waiting that long.
Right.
And so, for him to have been as calm and collected as he was after that wait, like, yeah, a lot of people, I think the only person that I would exclude from this that didn't see it come, like, a lot of people didn't see this coming. I think his wife knew exactly where this was going.
Well, and even if she didn't know exactly where it was going, she knew something was fucking happening.
Yeah.
Because after they go to the courthouse, they actually go to a different McDonald's that's across the street from the courthouse, have lunch, and then they decide they're going to go to the zoo.
Mm-hmm.
Normal family day. But as they're walking around at the zoo, he says to his wife, well, society had its chance. And apparently she doesn't think anything about this. Like, it doesn't seem... If my husband said that to me, I would be like, we need to go to the emergency room.
Yeah, like, what the fuck are you talking about?
Right, like, you need an evaluation.
Like, you're about to have your chance, buddy.
And granted, I know there's a 40-year difference between this and now, so we treat mental health crises very different than they did back then.
Yeah.
But they go home, and she says, I'm tired, I'm going to go take a nap. And he comes into the bedroom a little bit later and says, I want to give you a kiss goodbye. I'm going hunting humans. And she says, bye. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, she doesn't, I don't know what she really says, but she doesn't do
Have fun.
anything. Yeah. Have fun.
Yeah.
Doesn't do anything.
Doesn't call the police. Doesn't try and stop him, I assume. Probably just goes back to her nap, honestly.
And he leaves with all of his weapons, drives down the street. Now, granted, if she had called 911, I don't know how much of a difference it would have made, because the McDonald's was maybe 3 or 4 minutes from their apartment.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't have a long drive. It probably wasn't even 3 to 4 minutes.
He probably could have walked there if he didn't have all of his weapons.
Right. So I don't know if it would have made a huge difference necessarily. It probably wouldn't have stopped anything, but it may have made a difference as far as them getting that call thinking that the little girl at the bank was the emergency.
Mm-hmm.
If she had called and said, hey, my husband left with a bunch of ammo and a bunch of guns and says he's going people hunting. What do you think about that? Should we do something?
But instead, she just fucking sat by like she didn't even know him, didn't even know that he was speaking English to her.
But what's crazy to me is, but then it's important for her to call the media the next day.
And tell her story.
Right.
Shut the fuck
now
up.
you fucking care.
Yeah. Like,
Cool.
Fuck you.
Yeah. And the part that made me, I wanted to throw up, like literally throw up, was his wife, the shooter's wife, tried to sue McDonald's for $5 million, claiming their food is what caused her husband to commit the mass shooting.
Yeah, because her whole point was, well, we went to this place and we went to this place and then and he didn't shoot. Yeah, and you know why? Because you and your child were there.
Right.
He wasn't going to put you two in immediate danger. He was going to put other families in immediate danger.
Right.
So of course he's not going to do it in front of you, you fucking moron.
Yeah.
And she lost, thank God. But like, I'm literally shaking right now thinking about it because that shit makes me irate.
Yeah. The fact that there was even a lawyer who took that case,
I know.
that's fucking nuts. As you said earlier, this is what actually prompted Albert Leos to become a police officer, because he felt so helpless that day. He just never wanted to do that again.
Mm-hmm.
And he still has regrets to this day that he wasn't able to save people, which is so crazy to me that we have interviews of the actual police officers that were there that are like, we did what we could. We don't have any regrets. But you have this guy who was a young kid at the time or a young adult at the time who has regrets that he couldn't save
Who's
people.
had nightmares about these people,
Hmm.
about their screams, about the shots. And all he wanted to do was to ensure that this could never happen to someone again. And obviously, he's one man. And so being able to stop something like that, obviously, it would put his life in danger. But he knows that risk and he's willing to take that risk to save people.
Hmm.
And that is the difference between him being a police officer and the police officers who came and helped them,
Right.
because he wants to make that difference.
So the documentary then shows pictures of the victims that had passed away. And this isn't a complete list. I'm not sure why not. I'm just realizing it now. Otherwise, I would have taken the time to actually get the rest of them. But I didn't realize that it was late when I was putting the rest of this together. And I will probably butcher some of these names. So Eris Delcy Vargas was age 31, and she shielded her friend Guadalupe Del Rio, who did survive. Gus Verzlewis was 62. Michelle Carncross, 18. Claudia Perez, who was only 9 years old. Elsa Herlina Barboa, who was 19. Hugo Louis Velasquez, who was 45. Paulina Aquino was 21. And the sad thing about Paulina was she didn't want to go into work that day. And they interviewed her sister, Maria, who to this day carries guilt because her sister wanted her to be a responsible adult and basically guilted her into going to work that day.
Because I think for her as well, this was also her first job. And
she had just started.
Yeah, she hadn't been there long. And so she was like, you're going to get in trouble with them if you don't go in. And I know her sister carries so many regrets about that. And it's like, how could you have known?
Right.
All you were trying to do was make sure that she was just being responsible.
Right. And it's something that a lot of parents and older siblings do to people that are just starting out in the workforce.
Yes.
Because no one wants to work.
Yeah.
So, sometimes you need that little bit of extra motivation to go in. And I mean, I've been there with you where I'm like, you have to go. You have to go in. I've been there with myself. It's not, I feel awful for her that she lives with this guilt. And to the point where she says she does not pressure people into anything anymore.
Yeah, even her children, she's like, if my kids say they don't want to go to school, if they need a day, I let them take it.
Yeah, because she's so traumatized, thinking that if she had just not pressured Paulina, she would have stayed home. But there's nothing to say that Paulina wouldn't have been like, I do need to go in. I've done that where I've said I'm not going in, and then I give myself 10 minutes, and I'm like, fuck. All right, I'll get ready.
Yeah, exactly. So, I don't know. I just feel so awful. Like, especially when Charlie was like, is there anything that you would say to her if she was here now? And just her saying like, forgive me. Like,
I know
that like,
I can feel,
I know, I can feel it in my
nasal
yes.
passage, like getting a little teared up.
Yeah. Like, I just feel so awful. 'Cause I mean, she was so young too.
Mm-hmm.
How could you ever imagine something like this happening?
Right. And back then, I mean, first of all, you wouldn't imagine that someone is going to go to work and be murdered.
Yes.
But back then, this was unheard of.
Mm-hmm.
Now, not so much. But back then, it was unheard of.
Yeah.
And then Victor Cheeto Rivera, who was 25, and Maria Letitia's husband. He's the one that tried to talk the shooter down, and he shot him. Jose Ruben Lozano, who was 19, Maria Elena Colmenero, who was 19, Gloria Lopez, who was 23, Jackie Wright, who was 18, and her son Carlos, who was 8 months old. Jackie shielded her niece Aurora, who did survive, but Jackie was also pregnant at the time. She was shot 48 times with the Uzi.
I just don't understand. I don't get it. Why such overkill?
Yeah.
Why?
And it's crazy that he, went back to some victims more than once, and then others shot once or twice and then basically forgot about them and they survived.
How did you go from shooting this pregnant woman 48 times to, shooting another person 9 times to another person once? Like,
Right.
I just don't understand it. I don't get it.
Well, and Charlie Mann actually asked Wendy, why do you think he would go back to bodies? And she was like, I don't know, maybe he was bored. Maybe he just had something wrong with him. And that's the thing, is there are no answers.
Yeah.
That's the hard part. To end this, they had to kill him, but to kill him, you get no answers. In 1998, a satellite college campus took over the site. And in 1990, they put up a monument for the victims.
Mm-hmm.
So again, you can watch 77 Minutes on Amazon Prime.
And we super appreciate all of you coming and watching and just being here, doing all of the little things you do, the liking, commenting, and sharing. And we will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.